I would be shaking in my boots. If I had to get behind a camera and like craft out what the shots were going to be in the scene, how we're going to light it, I would be truly nervous to shoot something like this. Greig Fraser is the director, photographer, the cinematographer in a lot of films that I've enjoyed, but he is by far my favorite cinematographer right now and has been for a few years now. He did things like Dune Part 1, Part 2, The Batman with Robert Pattinson. He did Rogue One. He did the first season of Mandalorian. So he's done a lot of really great stuff visually. And I saw this video that I wanted to react to, doing an interview about his favorite shots from some of his movies. This is one that he talks about Rogue One, because again, he shot Rogue One, the iconic Vader scene.
Star Wars Rogue One. My most favorite shot in that film is the Darth Vader lightsaber coming on at the end of Rogue One.
This is probably the coolest moment in Star Wars history since the original trilogy. This one scene from Rogue One.
To me, I don't know, I still kind of get the chills when I watch that. And, you know, the magic's kind of lost a little bit with me being on set, creating a lot of these things, because, you know, it's me who remembers how much effort we went to figure out a way to make him backlit, even though the lightsaber's front lighting him, to make the lightsaber not light too much of Darth Vader, because Darth Vader front lit doesn't look as good as Darth Vader backlit. Like, there's a whole series of tests that we did to really figure out how to make that that scene work, how to make that introduction work. Gareth Coleman said, we've got an idea. Vader's in the ship. He's going to go gangbusters.
I couldn't imagine if I was a cinematographer for something like Rogue One, and they were like, we're going to bring back Darth Vader for just a scene, and it's going to be at the end of the film, and it's going to be the most epic thing since the trilogy. This is just nostalgia Darth Vader stuff, okay? That's what we're trying to capture here. I would be shaking in my boots. If I had to get behind a camera and like craft out what the shots were going to be in the scene, how we're going to light it, I would be truly nervous to shoot something like this.
And I went, okay, cool. I mean, always, anytime Vader's on set, it's always a good day, right? So you kind of, you know, you're like, all right, great, good to shoot Vader again, you know, me buddy Darth. But I was a bit perplexed because we'd shot something really good. And I sort of expressed that to Gareth and said, okay, well, sure, of course. I don't quite understand why, but, you know, fair enough. He explained the scene, and I was like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. That's a pretty cool scene. It was a chance to really create an iconic Vader moment. You know, as iconic as Vader walking through the smoke and the door of A New Hope.
Right.
You know, that scene, this black figure in this white space. I mean, you can't get any more iconic than that. And it was our chance.
Look, that original, that is iconic. I think I prefer Greig Fraser's version in Rogue One. It's a bit more iconic in my mind.
To kind of try and create something that was iconic also. You know, I wouldn't say as iconic because nothing would be. That's really, we hold that up as our gold standard. But, you know, as our chance to kind of create a Vader scene that had that level of sort of iconicness that people hopefully will watch years down the track and go, I want our thing to look like that.
I think his approach is far more thoughtful than a lot of cinematographers I'm seeing, especially in the big studio. Like, his approach to cinematography is heads and shoulders above anyone shooting for like Marvel or anyone shooting for any other Star Wars project right now. Like, his cinematography in Rogue One was truly incredible. I didn't care for the story that much. The cinematography was awesome, and it's so much better cinematography than any other Star Wars project, except for maybe season 1 of The Mandalorian, which was also shot by Greig Fraser. I want to get into this a little bit, where he talks about his favorite shot for Dune Part 1.
So Dune Part 1, favorite shot. You know, there's a few. You know, there's a few, but I'm gonna specify the shot that sums up that entire film for me, and that's when Paul first receives Face Full of Spice. I love the way Timothy looks in that. It ages Paul. He seems to grow a few years. Like, he seems to age a few years at that exact moment. And, you know, I don't know if it's a combination of sort of being a little more weathered because of the sand on his face, but he feels like he's just kind of matured.
The little glimmers of spice However they achieved that, it's awesome in this shot. It's truly awesome. The Batman. Now, I will say I've done a video on the Batman and the cinematography. So I'm not sure what his favorite shot will be, but I know a lot about the cinematography that went into this film.
The Batman is a film I shot over the course of 3 years, with COVID. So, for me, who normally does a film sort of 6-7 months and then
check it
moves
out.
on.
So he's doing volume. So people who don't know what the volume is, the volume technology, he's been kind of the pioneer cinematographer working with the volume. The volume is an LED building where the roof and the walls are just like either 180 degrees or 360 degrees of LED walls so they can project Unreal Engine, so like video game software worlds and landscapes, and make it look photorealistic. And it moves with the perspective of the camera. So the camera has a sensor on it. And when it looks at the wall, it's moving for perspective to be exact. It would see in real life, right? As if the eyes were like looking around or moving its head, right?
Yeah, the Batman I was living with for 3 years. The Batman was in my brain, in my visual cortex for 3 years. There's a couple I love in that film. The first introduction of our main character.
So he's got a couple shots he likes in the Batman. I do too.
Putting on his eye makeup. But I think my most favorite is the end of the movie. The Riddler has effectively realized that he has not succeeded in his journey.
This is an interesting shot because if you take a look at this, the composition to the shots in the Batman is insane. It's so incredibly dirty. It is most of the film. If you go back and watch the Batman again, most of the film is we know it's extremely dark, but most of the time it's exposing the focus of the image in little windows of light. That's what this whole film is. And so as you can see, he's literally using a window to where we just have a triangle shape and everything around the image is just dark. You can't see it. There's not even texture there. And you just see the focus of the emotion off of the Riddler's face. But we're just seeing it in this little triangular window inside of the actual window, like the screen, the full frame. Most of the cinematography in this film is truly impressive and fascinating. It's unique. It's one of the most unique cinematic films stylistically that I've ever seen. And maybe when he's saying was living with it for 3 years, it's very possible that it looks the way it does because he spent so much time with it.
The Riddler has effectively realized that he has not succeeded in his journey. He's standing in prison. He's staring out the window, again, wondering what's going on.
Just pockets, little windows of light, and it's not exposing the whole image. It's very fascinating and very engaging visually to look at.
And then a little voice comes in and has a chat to him.
Hey, don't be sad.
I love the mood of that scene, and I love the fact that it sets up such an interesting arc for those characters, and it ends in a really sort of abstract way where we don't get to see those characters too clearly. It ends up being light, flare, darkness. It feels to me like a little bit like being underwater, except
that's really insightful. Being underwater, disorienting, but at the same time able to observe what's going on. It's suffocating. That's what it is. It's suffocating.
This needed to be a lot more unusual. So the concept effectively was to try and create something that was a little more, heavenly, something that was a little bit harder to kind of put a pin in and harder to read. Part 2 was a tough one because I lived and breathed like all of our collaborators on that movie, every single shot, every single day. But I think the one that really got my blood going in the cinema was during Paul's worm writing. I saw Denis' favorite shot on this, and it was really funny. I was like watching his interview like a fanboy, and
I will say I have heard him talk about this in another interview before.
Denis' favorite shot is where Paul stands up. It's the shot behind him as he kind of gets his knee off the worm and then starts to stand up. My favorite shot was the one exactly after that, where he's standing up and it's on a long lens. It's shaking. And
I'm going to be honest. When I watched it, that was one of my favorite shots too. The side profile movement with the worm. of Paul riding. It's not probably my favorite shot of the whole film. Honestly, my favorite shot of the whole film might be Paul when he's raising his hand and he's giving the speech not on top of the mountain, but underground with the Fremen. And you see the pockets of light coming in through the ceiling, and it shows how deep this cave goes, or this underground layer goes. And so it illuminates in little pockets of light how many people are actually there. And Paul is speaking to all of them, and he's like throwing his fist in there. It's one of the shots in that scene that I think probably sticks out to me the most.
And moving really quickly. I remember seeing that in the cinema for the first time I saw the film with Denis, with full sound and everything. And I was high-fiving the air. Like I was, punching Denis, going, this is amazing. With Han's score and with everything, that was my favorite shot for that whole sequence. And, it's still, every time I see it, even from when we shot it, I remember seeing it, on the monitor being shot, and I had the same reaction.
When you get a good shot, it's a good shot, right? I have not experienced the amount of joy that probably he's experienced, because I haven't put together a shot that comes close to anywhere of how brilliant his cinematics are. However, I have put together a handful of really beautiful, really, really dynamic and storytelling compositions with light and everything. And I get real excited about it. And I actually will sometimes just like take a picture of it on the monitor. And then that night I'll pull it up on the computer and I'll just make it full screen and I'll look at it. I'll be like, heck yeah, because it's exciting. It's like a form of creation. And the interesting thing is, back in the day, it used to live on film, like 35 millimeter. It was something physical you could hold that you're like, I used light and I captured this, right? With today's world, with streaming everything, it's all ones and zeros, digital. It is light sensors, but it's electronic pictures, motion pictures. And so everything is passing through this ones and zeros data center. And so we can view it on screens, but at the end of the day, it's not something I can hold. I can't like hold my shot. I can't hold my composition, my work. And at the same time, it still is exhilarating. Having to pull up a screen to show someone what my work looks like can feel weird, especially it kind of feels like, oh, I'm not working on stuff that's tangible, but you are. Let me know in the comments if you guys knew about Greig Fraser, if you like his work, if you like the movies he's worked on. Tell me what your favorite shot or your favorite movie that we discussed in this video is.